Commander Vexhai stood at the viewing window of the Galactic Amphitheater, watching the transport ships arrive. His tall, gray form cast a shadow across the metal floor as he waited for the newest batch of fighters. The amphitheater was huge, floating in space like a giant metal moon. Inside, aliens from across the galaxy came to watch lesser species fight for their lives. Vexhai had seen this many times before. Weak creatures from small worlds would be brought here to entertain the advanced races. Most died quickly, some lasted a few matches. None ever won their freedom. Today was different, though. The transport carried humans from a planet called Earth. Vexhai had read the reports. These creatures were small, soft, and used primitive weapons. Their world had been easily conquered by the harvest ships. The only resistance had come from one city, where a group of their military had refused to surrender. Sol. Vexhai said the word slowly. That was the name of their last stronghold. The humans there had fought for 3 days before being overwhelmed. Most had died. The survivors were now coming to the amphitheater. The transport ship docked with a heavy thud. Vexhai watched through the thick glass as the prisoners were led out. They wore simple gray uniforms and metal chains. 5 humans walked in a line, surrounded by robotic guards. The first human was tall for his species, with dark hair and calm eyes. He looked around the docking bay without fear, taking note of exits and guard positions. His name, according to the files, was Taman. He had been some kind of special soldier on Earth. Behind him walked a female human with shorter hair. She kept looking at the others, checking if they were hurt or sick. This was Hana, listed as a medical worker. She moved like someone used to, helping people. The third human was young, maybe barely an adult. His hands shook slightly, but he tried to hide it. Do-yun, the file said. He had been a new soldier when Sol fell. Next came another female, this one moving with the confidence of someone who knew machines and vehicles. Jiwan had been a pilot before her capture. Her eyes were always looking up, as if she missed the sky. The last human was older than the others. Gray touched his hair and scars marked his hands. Kyung walked like a leader, even in chains. He was the highest-ranking military person among them. Small creatures, said General Korax, joining Vexhai at the window. The beetle-like alien clicked, his mandibles in amusement. The betting pools give them terrible odds. Most think they will die in the first fight. Vexhai nodded. The humans did look weak compared to other fighters they had seen. The Krillian beast warriors waiting in the lower levels were twice their size and had been enhanced with combat drugs. The crowd expected an easy show, but something bothered Vexhai as he watched the humans being led to their cells. When the guards pushed them roughly, they did not stumble or cry out. When one guard hit Do-hyun with an electric stick, the young human just took it without making a sound. The others moved closer to him, forming a protective group. In the cell block, things got more interesting. Most species, when thrown together, would fight among themselves or break down in despair. The humans did neither. Taman immediately began, checking the cell for weaknesses. He ran his hands along the walls, tested the bars, and examined the lock mechanism. He did this quietly without drawing attention from the guards. Hana went to each person, checking for injuries. She had no medical supplies, but she used pieces of her own clothing to clean Do-yun's wound where the guard had hit him. The others let her work without complaint. Kyung started organizing them. He assigned sleeping spots, decided who would keep watch, and established a schedule for exercise. His voice was low and calm, like someone used to being obeyed. Jiwan studied the air vents and lighting systems. She seemed to be mapping the entire cell block in her mind. Do-yun, despite being the youngest and most scared, followed every order. Without question, he helped distribute the small amount of food and water they were given. They are organizing quickly, Vexhai noted to himself. Most species took days to establish any kind of group structure. The humans had done it in hours. Over the next few days, Vexhai found himself watching the humans more than he intended. They had created a military unit inside their prison cell. They exercised together, shared knowledge about their captors, and never once talked about giving up. The most unusual thing was how they treated each other. In every other species Vexhai had observed, the strong would take food from the weak, or the leaders would get better treatment. The humans did the opposite. When food was scarce, the older ones made sure the younger ones ate first. When there was only one comfortable sleeping spot, they gave it to whoever was most hurt or tired. Curious behavior, Vexhai wrote in his daily log. They seem to put group survival above individual benefit. This is not logical for a primitive species. The night before their first fight, Vexhai watched the humans through the security cameras. He expected to see fear, panic, or despair. Instead, he saw something else entirely. Taman was drawing diagrams on the cell floor with a piece of metal. He showed the others the layout of the arena, marking weak points and possible advantages. His voice was too low for the microphones to pick up, but his gestures were clear. He was teaching them tactics. Hana was preparing medical supplies from torn clothing and metal scraps. She had somehow created basic bandages and splints from prison materials. Kyung was telling stories. Vexahai could not hear the words, but he could see the effect. The younger humans sat straighter, looked more confident. Whatever the old soldier was saying, it was giving them courage. Jiwon had found a way to look through the air vent. She was studying the arena from above, memorizing every detail. Even young Do-hyun was contributing. He was practicing movements, shadowboxing against an invisible opponent. His form was basic, but determined. They are not preparing to survive, Vexahai realized with surprise. They are preparing to win. The morning of the fight arrived with great excitement among the spectators. The amphitheater's main arena filled with thousands of alien viewers. They had come to see the famous Krillian beast warriors destroy another group of weak primitives. Vexhai took his usual seat in the command viewing area. From here, he could see everything and communicate with the arena controllers. The betting board showed odds of 50-1 against the humans. A few drunk spectators had placed small wagers on them as a joke. "This should be quick," said Admiral Zoroth, settling into the seat next to Vexhai. The squid-like alien's tentacles writhed with anticipation. "The beast warriors have never lost a match. These soft creatures will not even provide good entertainment." Vexhai said nothing, but he found himself hoping the Admiral was wrong. The arena floor was a circle of hard metal surrounded by high walls. There were a few obstacles, some metal barriers, and a shallow pit in the center. Nothing that would give much advantage to either side. First, the beast warriors entered. 3 massive creatures, each nearly 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor plating. Their genetic modifications made them incredibly strong and aggressive. They roared at the crowd, showing teeth like metal knives. The crowd cheered loudly. These were proven killers, entertainers who had slaughtered dozens of species over the years. Then the gates opened for the humans. They walked out calmly, in formation. Taman led, with Kyung beside him. The other 3 followed in a precise pattern. They did not run or stumble or show fear. Instead, they looked around the arena with professional interest, as if they were studying a battlefield instead of walking to their deaths. The crowd fell quieter. This was not the behavior they expected from doomed primitives. Vexhai leaned forward in his seat. For the first time in centuries of watching gladiatorial combat, he was not sure what would happen next. The beast warriors charged with a roar that shook the arena walls. The humans did not run. Instead, something impossible happened. They smiled. The beast warriors charged across the arena floor like living tanks. Their massive feet shook the metal ground with each step. Drool flew from their open mouths as they roared their battle cry. In hundreds of previous fights, this charge had ended everything within seconds. The humans did not run. Instead, Taman raised his right hand and made a quick gesture. The other humans moved instantly, splitting apart in different directions. It was like watching a single creature become 5 separate parts of a larger machine. Hana dropped back, positioning herself behind a metal barrier but keeping sightlines to all her companions. Her hands were already moving, tearing strips from her prison uniform to make emergency bandages. Do-hyun went left, his young legs carrying him quickly to the arena wall. Despite his fear, he moved exactly where Taman had indicated. Jiwon went right, using her pilot training to calculate angles and distances. She grabbed a loose piece of metal debris as she moved. Kyung ran straight toward the center pit, but not in panic. His movement was controlled, purposeful. The crowd fell silent. This was not how prey animals were supposed to behave. The first, beast warrior, the largest one, followed Kyung toward the pit. Its claws scraped against the metal floor as it ran. Just as it reached the edge, ready to leap down and crush the old human, Kyung did something unexpected. He stopped running and spun around. The beast warrior, moving too fast to change direction, sailed over him and crashed into the pit wall. It was not seriously hurt, but it was confused and angry. At the same moment, the second beast warrior chased Do-hyun toward the wall. The young human seemed terrified, stumbling as he ran. The creature roared in triumph, certain of an easy kill. But Do-hyun's stumbling was not real panic. When he reached the wall, he used his momentum to run up it for several steps, like the martial artists from his homeland. The beast warrior, expecting him to be trapped, ran full speed into the metal barrier. The impact rang through the arena like a giant bell. The third beast warrior went after Ji-won, thinking the small female would be the easiest target. It was wrong. Ji-won had been studying the creature's movement pattern as it charged. When it got close, she threw the metal debris not at the beast warrior, but at the ground in front of its feet. The creature stepped on the metal piece, which rolled like a ball. The beast warrior's own momentum sent it sliding sideways into one of the arena barriers. All three beast warriors were now confused, angry, and separated from each other. This had never happened before. "What are they doing?" Admiral Zoroth whispered, his tentacles twitching nervously. Vexhai watched with growing amazement. "They are using the creature's own strength against them," he said quietly. The humans regrouped quickly. Taemin made another hand signal, and they shifted positions again. This time they were not running away from the beast warriors. They were hunting them. The first beast warrior climbed out of the pit, roaring with rage. It looked around for the old human who had tricked it. Kyung was standing in the open, apparently defenseless, but as the creature charged again, Do-hyun appeared from the side. The young human had found a long piece of broken metal. He did not try to fight the beast warrior directly. Instead, he struck at its knee joint as it passed. The beast warrior stumbled but did not fall. However, its next steps were uneven. The injury was small, but it was the first time anyone had ever wounded a beast warrior in the arena. The crowd began to murmur. This was not going as expected. Ji-won moved next. She had found more metal debris and was throwing it with precise accuracy. Not at the beast warriors themselves, but at the ground around their feet, making the surface slippery and unpredictable. The creatures were still much stronger than the humans, but they were losing their main advantage, speed and sure footing. Hana had been watching from her position, studying the beast warrior's anatomy. When the second creature turned toward her thinking she was helpless, she proved them wrong. As it charged, she waited until the last second, then dropped flat to the ground. The beast warrior's claws passed over her, but she rolled sideways and struck upward with a sharp piece of metal. She hit the creature in a nerve cluster behind its knee. The beast warrior roared in pain and confusion. Its leg went numb and it crashed to the ground. Impossible. General Korax clicked his mandibles in disbelief. They know beast warrior anatomy. How can primitives know our combat biology? Vexhai had no answer. He was watching the humans with new eyes. These were not random lucky strikes. Everything they did was planned, coordinated, efficient. The third beast warrior, seeing its companions in trouble, became more cautious. It circled the humans, looking for an opening. But the humans had formed a tight group, covering each other's blind spots. Taemin stepped forward. In his hand was a long piece of broken metal, sharpened to a point. He held it like a spear, with the confidence of someone who had used such weapons before. The beast warrior charged at him directly. This time there was nowhere to run, no tricks with the environment. Taemin did not try to dodge. Instead, he planted the spear point in the ground at an angle and braced it with his whole body. The beast warrior, running at full speed, could not stop in time. It impaled itself on the improvised spear. The creature's own momentum drove the metal deep into its chest, It roared once, then fell silent. The arena went completely quiet. For the first time in the amphitheater's history, a beast warrior was dead. The other two creatures, seeing their companion fall, lost their confidence. They began to back away from the humans. But the humans were not finished. Kyung picked up the fallen beast warrior's claw, which had broken off during the impact. It made a good knife. Dohyun and Jiwon found other pieces of natural armor that could be used as shields. Working together, they surrounded the second beast warrior. It was still limping from Hana's nerve strike. When it tried to attack Kyung, Dohyun blocked with his improvised shield. When it turned toward Dohyun, Jiwon struck from behind. When it spun to face her, Kyung cut at its other leg. They were like a pack of wolves, taking turns to weaken their prey while staying out of reach of its claws. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the second beast warrior slowly collapsed from blood loss and exhaustion. The last creature, seeing both its companions defeated, did something that shocked everyone in the amphitheater. It ran. The mighty beast warrior, undefeated champion of hundreds of battles, tried to escape from 5 small humans. But there was nowhere to go. The arena walls were too high and the exits were sealed. The humans followed it calmly, not rushing. They had learned its patterns now. They knew it was more afraid than they were. When they finally cornered it, the beast warrior made one last, desperate attack. It leaped at Taemin with all its remaining strength. All 5 humans moved at once. Kyung and Dohyun blocked its claws with their shields. Jiwon and Hana struck at its legs. Taemin in the center drove another sharp piece of metal up into the creature's throat. The third beast warrior fell dead at their feet. The arena was silent for long seconds. Then, slowly, a few aliens began to clap. The sound spread until the entire amphitheater was filled with applause, but Vexhai was not clapping. He was staring at the humans in the arena below. They had not celebrated their victory. Instead, Hana was immediately checking the others for injuries. Dohyun had a deep cut on his arm where a claw had gotten through. She was already cleaning it and wrapping it with cloth bandages. Taemin was collecting the best weapons from the battlefield. Jiwon was studying the arena walls looking for weaknesses. Kyung was watching the exits ready for whatever came next. Even in victory, they remained soldiers. How? Admiral Zoroth whispered. How did they do this? Vexhai shook his head. He had no explanation. According to every military analysis, the humans should have been dead within minutes. Instead, they had just accomplished something impossible. As the humans were led back to their cells, Taemin looked up at the viewing area. His eyes found Vexhai through the reinforced glass. The human's expression was not one of triumph or anger. It was something much worse. It was pity. Vexhai felt a cold sensation run through his body. For the first time in his long military career, he wondered if he was on the wrong side of this fight. The betting odds changed overnight. Where humans had been 50-1 against, they were now only 10-1. Some of the more observant aliens had noticed that the beast warrior victory had not been luck. Vexhai found himself reviewing the battle recordings obsessively. He watched the fight 7 times, studying every movement, every decision. Each viewing revealed new details that disturbed him more. The humans had not just won. They had made the beast warriors look clumsy and predictable. Creatures that had dominated the arena for years had been reduced to confused, frightened animals. They studied our champions, he realized. While we were watching them in their cells, they were learning about us. 3 days after the beast warrior fight, the next match was announced. The humans would face the Zenthari hunters, lean, fast creatures that could spit acid and climb walls. The hunters had never lost to ground-based opponents. General Korax visited Vexhai's observation post before the match. The arena masters are concerned, the beetle-like alien admitted. Ticket sales have tripled. Everyone wants to see if the human victory was real or just luck. Vexhai nodded, but did not reply. He was watching the humans in their cell through the security monitors. They had been given slightly better food after their victory, but they were not relaxing. Taemin had somehow acquired acid burns on his hands. Small ones, deliberately inflicted. He was testing how the Xanthari acid affected human skin, learning its properties through direct experience. Hana was working with him, studying the burns and developing treatments. She had created a paste from food scraps and water that seemed to neutralize the acid somewhat. Jiwan was exercising differently now. She was climbing the cell walls using tiny handholds to practice moving like the hunters. Her pilot training helped her understand three-dimensional movement. Kyung was teaching the others about momentum and leverage. He used gestures to show how to redirect an attacker's force, how to turn speed against an opponent. Do-hyun, his arm still bandaged from the previous fight, was practicing with his offhand. He was not letting his injury slow him down. They are preparing for a specific enemy, Vexai noted. They somehow know what they will face. The morning of the second fight, the amphitheater was packed. Word had spread across the galaxy about the Beast Warrior defeat. Military observers from a dozen species were present studying these unusual humans. The Xanthari hunters entered the arena like green lightning. 5 of them, moving so fast they were hard to follow. They immediately spread out and began climbing, the walls surrounding the humans from above. The crowd cheered. This was more like what they expected. The humans were trapped in the center while acid-spitting predators circled overhead. Taemin looked up at the climbing hunters and smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. The humans moved into a tight formation, backs to each other, looking up at all angles. They had learned this arrangement in their cell, Vexai realized. They had practiced fighting enemies that could attack from above. The first hunter dropped from the ceiling, mouth open to spit acid at Hana. She was ready. As the acid flew toward her, she threw a piece of cloth into its path. The cloth absorbed most of the acid, and the rest splattered harmlessly to the side. While the hunter was still falling, she struck it with a metal rod in exactly the right spot to paralyze its acid glands. The hunter crashed to the ground, alive but unable to spit. The second hunter tried to attack Do-hyun from the side wall. The young human had been watching its movement pattern. When it leaped at him, he was not where it expected him to be. Instead, he was slightly to the left, holding a polished piece of metal like a mirror. The hunter's acid shot reflected back into its own face. Blinded and burning, it fell easy prey to Kyung's improvised spear. The third hunter was more cautious. It stayed high on the walls, spitting acid down at the humans while staying out of their reach. But Jiwon had been waiting for this. She had found small pieces of metal debris and was throwing them with incredible accuracy. Not at the hunter, but at the wall sections where it was climbing. Each piece of metal hit exactly where the hunter's claws needed to grip. The creature found its handholds disappearing, its path blocked by obstacles. Finally, it had no choice but to come down to ground level. When it did, all 5 humans were waiting. The 4th and 5th hunters tried a coordinated attack, coming from opposite walls at the same time. It was a tactic that had never failed before. The humans split into 2 groups. Taemin and Hana took one hunter, while Kyung, Do-hyun, and Jiwon handled the other. But even split up, they fought as a team. When Taemin needed a distraction, Jiwon threw metal debris at his opponent's eyes. When Kyung was positioned wrong, Hana called out a warning that let him dodge an acid attack. Within minutes, all 5 Xanthari hunters were dead or dying. The crowd was no longer just impressed. They were worried. 2 victories, Admiral Zoroth said nervously. Perhaps we should reconsider the next match. Vexai shook his head. The arena masters will not stop now. Too much money is being wagered. They need to prove the humans can be beaten. He was right. Over the following weeks, the humans faced increasingly deadly challenges. They fought the mechanical drones of the Robotics Guild. Kyung discovered that the machines had a weakness in their joint systems. The humans broke them apart with precise strikes, turning advanced technology into scrap metal. They survived the psychic assault of the Mind Reader Collective. Taemin had somehow learned to compartmentalize his thoughts, teaching the others to protect their minds through meditation techniques from his homeworld. They defeated the quantum void wolves, creatures that could shift in and out of phase reality. Hana figured out their shifting pattern and predicted where they would appear. The pack hunters became easy targets. Each victory was more disturbing than the last. The humans were not just surviving impossible odds. They were learning, adapting, evolving their tactics with each battle. Vexhai began having nightmares. In them, he saw human soldiers spreading across the galaxy, using the same terrifying combination of intelligence, adaptability, and absolute refusal to surrender. The most disturbing thing was how they treated their victories. Other species would celebrate, boast, or break down from stress. The humans did none of these things. After each fight, they returned to their cell and began preparing for the next one. They shared knowledge, practiced new techniques, and took care of each other's wounds. They showed no signs of trauma, fear, or doubt. They are enjoying this, Vexhai realized with horror. They are not fighting for survival anymore. They are fighting because they like it. The truth was more complex than that, but Vexhai could not see it yet. The humans were not enjoying the violence. They were finding meaning in it. Every victory proved something important to them. It proved that their species could not be easily broken. It proved that their training and traditions were valuable. It proved that dying on their feet was better than living on their knees. Most importantly, it proved that the alien civilizations that had conquered their world were not as superior as they claimed to be. After their 7th consecutive victory, the Arena Masters made an announcement that shocked the galaxy. The humans would face the Executors. The Executors were not entertainers or gladiators. They were the Galactic Council's personal military unit. Enhanced soldiers with the best technology, training, and genetic modifications available. They had never fought in the arena before because they had never needed to prove their superiority. It was simply assumed. But the humans had won 7 impossible victories. Doubt was spreading through the galaxy. Questions were being asked about the true nature of human military capability. The Executors would end those questions permanently. At least, that was the plan. Vexhai watched the preparations with growing unease. The Executors were bringing weapons that had never been used in the arena before. Energy rifles, personal shields, combat drugs that would make them nearly invincible. The humans, meanwhile, seemed strangely calm. They sat in their cell, sharing their last meal, talking quietly among themselves. They know they are going to die, General Corax observed. Finally, they are showing appropriate fear. But Vexhai was not so sure. He had learned to read human expressions over the past weeks. What he saw on their faces was not fear. It was anticipation. The night before the final match, Vexhai made a decision that would change his life forever. He accessed the classified files on Earth's conquest. What he found there made him question everything he thought he knew about humanity. Vexhai's hands trembled as he opened the classified files on Earth's conquest. His security clearance gave him access to information that few beings in the galaxy had ever seen. What he discovered in those digital records changed everything. He thought he understood about the humans in the arena below. The official reports had been sanitized, simplified. The real story was far more disturbing. Earth's major governments had indeed surrendered when the harvest ships arrived. The planet's most advanced militaries had laid down their arms after seeing demonstrations of alien technology. Most of humanity had accepted occupation without resistance, but the sole defense had not been organized by any government. According to the detailed intelligence files, the last stand in Seoul had been led by military units that their own command structure had declared obsolete. These were soldiers who used older tactics, relied on traditional training methods, and had been scheduled for early retirement or reassignment. When Earth's formal military surrendered, these outdated units had simply ignored the order. Taemin had been marked for discharge because his tactical methods were considered too rigid for modern warfare. His commanders thought he relied too heavily on old-fashioned discipline and coordination. Hana had been working in an underground medical network, treating refugees and resistance fighters while the official medical corps cooperated with alien occupation forces. Kyung had been training civilian resistance cells despite direct orders to stand down. His superiors thought his methods were unnecessarily harsh and emotionally outdated. Do-hyun and Ji-won had been among the few who volunteered to join the Seoul defense when the call went out. Most soldiers had chosen to accept safe surrender instead. These are not even Earth's best warriors, Vexhai whispered to himself. These are the ones their own military rejected. But the files contained something even more disturbing. Hidden in technical appendices and casualty reports, Vexhai found references to the real cost of Earth's conquest. The Sol defense had lasted 3 days against overwhelming odds. But in those 3 days, the obsolete human forces had destroyed 3 entire harvest fleets, killed thousands of alien soldiers, and forced the Galactic Council to commit resources that were supposed to be used for conquering 6 other worlds. The humans had not been beaten by superior tactics or technology. They had been overwhelmed by sheer numbers after fighting to the point of complete exhaustion, and even then, they had not surrendered. The last signals from Sol had been tactical updates, shared between units that knew they were about to die. Right to the end, they had been trying to pass information to any human forces that might continue the fight. Vexhai scrolled through battle analyses, equipment reports, and psychological profiles. A pattern emerged that made his blood run cold. Human units in Sol had not fought like a desperate last stand. They had fought like a training exercise. Every battle had been documented, recorded, and analyzed. The humans had been collecting data on alien military capabilities, testing different tactics, and refining their methods even while facing annihilation. They were learning, Vexhai realized. The Sol defense was not just resistance, it was research. The most disturbing file was a communication intercept from the final hours of the battle. Human soldiers, surrounded and out of ammunition, had been sending coded messages to hidden receivers around Earth. The messages contained tactical data, enemy weaknesses, and strategic recommendations. The dying soldiers had been teaching their species how to fight an alien occupation. They turned their own deaths into lessons, Vexhai said aloud. But there was more. The files contained post-conquest intelligence reports that had been classified at the highest levels. Apparently, the Sol defense had worked better than anyone realized. Across Earth, small groups of humans had received those final transmissions. They had learned from the data sent by the dying defenders, and they had begun to organize. The reports mentioned supply depot explosions, communication station attacks, and mysterious deaths among alien occupation personnel. Nothing dramatic or obvious, but a steady pattern of resistance that was growing more effective over time. Earth was not as pacified as the public reports claimed. Vexhai looked up from the files and stared through his window at the arena below. The 5 humans in the cell were not random prisoners. They were teachers. Every fight in the arena had been broadcast across the galaxy. Every tactical innovation, every adaptive technique, every demonstration of human military thinking had been transmitted to billions of worlds, including Earth. The arena broadcasts, he whispered. They reach Earth too. He pulled up the communication logs and confirmed his worst fear. The gladiatorial matches were indeed transmitted to conquered worlds as entertainment and a demonstration of alien superiority. But any human resistance cells still operating on Earth would be watching those transmissions for a very different reason. They would be learning. Vexhai began to understand the terrible irony of the situation. The Galactic Council had put human soldiers in the arena to break their species' morale. Instead, they had created a military training program that was being broadcast directly to enemy forces. Every time Taman demonstrated tactics that worked against alien technology, resistance fighters on Earth were taking notes. Every time Hana showed how to treat wounds caused by alien weapons, human medics were improving their battlefield medicine. Every time the team adapted to a new threat, human commanders were studying their methods. The arena was not just entertainment. It was the most effective military intelligence operation in galactic history, and the humans had planned it that way. Vexhai's hands shook as he realized the truth. The Sol defense had not been a desperate last stand. It had been bait. The obsolete soldiers had allowed themselves to be captured. Knowing they would end up in the arena, they had volunteered to become teaching tools for their species. They had been expecting this. Vexhai looked through the security cameras at the humans in their cell. They were sitting quietly, conserving energy for tomorrow's fight against the executors. But their calm was not resignation. It was the confidence of soldiers who had already accomplished their mission. The arena masters thought they were about to prove human inferiority by having the executors destroy these prisoners. But Vexhai now understood that this had been the humans' goal from the beginning. The executors represented the best the Galactic Council had to offer. Their weapons, tactics, and enhancements were the most advanced military technology in known space. And tomorrow, human soldiers would study all of it in combat conditions while billions of their species watched and learned. They are not prisoners, Vexhai said to himself. They are spies. He thought about alerting the arena masters, warning them of what the humans were really doing. But as he reached for his communication device, he hesitated. Something had changed in him over the weeks of watching these humans fight. At first, he had seen them as entertainment, then as a curiosity, then as a threat. Now he was beginning to see them as something else entirely. He was beginning to see them as an example of what his own species had once been, long ago before they became comfortable with watching others suffer for their amusement. Vexhai looked at his reflection in the dark window. He was a military commander of an advanced civilization. He had technology, genetic enhancements, and resources that these humans could not imagine. But when had he last risked his life for something he believed in? When had he last stood up to protect the weak instead of exploiting them? When had he last chosen principle over convenience? Humans in the arena had been sentenced to death for refusing to surrender their world. They had accepted certain doom rather than live under occupation. And what had Vexhai chosen? He had chosen comfort, safety, and the entertainment value of watching others die. Which of us is really the advanced species, he wondered. The question haunted him through the night. In the morning, he would watch the executors try to destroy 5 human soldiers, but he was no longer sure who he wanted to win. For the first time in his long life, Commander Vexhai was ashamed of his civilization. And somewhere deep in his mind, a small voice was asking a dangerous question. What would happen if he helped the humans instead of watching them die? The day of the final match arrived with unprecedented ceremony. The Galactic Council had declared it a special event, broadcast live to every world in their territory. Military leaders from dozens of species filled the VIP viewing sections. This was meant to be more than entertainment. It was a demonstration of power. The executors entered the arena first, and even Vexhai had to admit they were impressive. 5 of the most dangerous soldiers in the galaxy, enhanced with the best technology available. Each one wore powered armor that could deflect energy weapons. Their rifles could cut through starship hulls. Combat drugs flowed through their systems, making them faster and stronger than any natural creature. They moved like a perfect military unit, coordinated and deadly. These were not gladiators or show fighters. These were professional killers who had conquered worlds. The crowd fell silent as they took their positions. Everyone understood that this was different from the previous matches. The executors were not here to entertain. They were here to end the human problem permanently. Then the gates opened for the humans. They walked out as they always did, calmly, in formation, apparently unafraid. But Vexhai could see subtle differences now that he knew what to look for. Their movements were slightly different, more precise. Their eyes were taking in details about the executors' equipment and formation with professional interest. These were not condemned prisoners walking to their deaths. These were intelligence operatives about to complete their mission. Taman stepped forward slightly as the team leader. For the first time since arriving at the arena, he spoke loud enough for the microphones to pick up his words. "Thank you," he said, looking directly at the viewing area where the council leaders sat. "You have given us exactly what we needed." Admiral Zoroth leaned forward, confused. "What does he mean?" Vexhai said nothing, but he understood. The humans needed to see the Galactic Council's best weapons and tactics in action. The arena had provided the perfect laboratory. The executors raised their energy rifles. At this range, with their advanced targeting systems, missing was impossible. The humans had no armor, no shields, and nowhere to hide. The crowd held its breath. The executors fired and missed. not because their aim was bad, but because the humans were no longer where they had been. In the split second between the weapons, charging and firing, all 5 humans had moved in different directions with impossible speed. HFY blinked. He had watched the humans fight for weeks, but this was different. They were moving faster, more efficiently than ever before. How? General Korax clicked his mandibles in confusion. HFY realized the answer. They have been holding back. In every previous fight, the humans had appeared to struggle, to barely survive their encounters. But that had been an act. They had been fighting at just the level needed to win while appearing vulnerable. Now, facing the executors, they were finally showing their true capabilities. Taemin moved like liquid shadow, covering ground with a speed that his previous fights had not suggested. He was not running from the executor hunting him. He was hunting it back. Hana had found a piece of arena debris that she threw with impossible accuracy. The metal fragment struck an executor's rifle just as it fired, deflecting the energy beam back into another executor's armor. Ji-won was somehow staying ahead of targeting computers that should have been able to track her movement. Her pilot training was allowing her to think in 3 dimensions, using the arena's obstacles in ways the executors could not predict. Kyung and Do-hyun worked together with coordination that looked telepathic. They moved as one organism, covering each other's movements, while drawing 2 executors into a carefully prepared trap. But the most disturbing thing was their faces. For weeks, HFY had seen them show determination, focus, and tactical thinking. Now, for the first time, he saw something else. Joy. They were enjoying this. Not the violence, but the challenge. After weeks of fighting creatures and machines, they finally had opponents who could match their skills. This was the kind of battle they had been born to fight. The first executor to fall was the one chasing Taemin. The human had led it into the arena's center, where footing was uncertain due to the shallow pit. When the executor stumbled slightly, Taemin was there. He had acquired the creature's own combat knife during the chase. When or how, HFY could not say. The blade slid between armor plates with surgical precision, finding the one weak point in the executor's protection. The alien warrior fell, its enhanced blood mixing with the arena sand. The crowd was completely silent now. An executor had never been killed before. They were the Galactic Council's ultimate soldiers. The second executor fell to Hana's medical knowledge. She had been studying alien anatomy for weeks, learning from each opponent. When the armored warrior got close enough, she struck at a nerve cluster that paralyzed its weapon arm. Then she used its own sidearm to finish it. The third executor tried to maintain distance, using its superior firepower to keep the humans away. But Ji-won had learned to read energy weapon charge patterns. She moved with the timing of the shots, always one step ahead of where the beams would strike. When the executor's weapon overheated from rapid firing, she was already in motion. The alien warrior died before its rifle could cool down. Kyung and Do-hyun faced the last 2 executors together. These aliens had seen their companions die and were fighting with desperate fury now. Their training told them this should not be possible. But the 2 humans fought with something the executors had never encountered: absolute trust in each other. When Kyung moved left, Do-hyun knew to go right without being told. When Do-hyun dropped low, Kyung knew to strike high. They moved like dancers, like a machine with 2 parts, like brothers who had trained together for decades. The executors, for all their enhancements and technology, could not match that level of coordination. They fell within minutes. The arena floor was covered with the bodies of the Galactic Council's finest warriors. The humans stood in the center, breathing heavily, but victorious. They had not just survived, they had won so completely that it looked easy. The silence stretched for long seconds. Then somewhere in the crowd, one alien began to clap. The sound spread slowly, uncertainly, until the entire amphitheater was filled with applause. But HFY was not clapping. He was staring at Taemin, who had once again looked up to find him in the viewing area. This time, the human's expression was different. Not pity, not sadness. It was a look of completion, of a job well done. The human soldier nodded slightly, as if thanking HFY for something. And suddenly, Vexhai understood the final piece of the puzzle. The humans had not just been collecting intelligence for their own species. They had been teaching a lesson to anyone in the galaxy who was willing to learn it. They had shown that the Galactic Council's power was not based on superiority. It was based on the willingness of others to surrender without fighting. Every species in the amphitheater had given up when faced with alien technology and numbers. They had accepted defeat because resistance seemed impossible. But the humans had proved it was not impossible. They had faced the Council's best and won. As Vexhai watched, something unprecedented happened. Several aliens in the crowd began to leave their seats and walk toward the exits, not in disgust or boredom, but with purpose. They were military commanders from conquered worlds, species that had submitted to Council rule, and they were leaving to send messages home. The humans had not just defeated the executors, they had planted seeds of rebellion across the galaxy. Admiral Zoroth turned to Vexhai, his tentacles writhing with panic. "We have to stop those broadcasts. Cut the transmission feeds, this cannot spread." But it was too late. The match had been broadcast live to billions of worlds. The recordings were already spreading through communication networks faster than they could be blocked. Somewhere on Earth, human resistance cells were studying footage of their captured soldiers dismantling the Council's best weapons and tactics. Somewhere, in the galaxy, other conquered species were asking themselves why they had surrendered so easily. And somewhere in the depths of space, Vexhai realized, the real war was about to begin. The humans in the arena had not been prisoners or gladiators or entertainment. They had been teachers, and their lessons were about to change everything. 3 days after the executor match, Commander Vexhai sat alone in his quarters, staring at reports that confirmed his worst fears. The humans had been released, officially sent back to a prison world where they would supposedly live out their days in comfortable exile. Everyone knew it was a lie. The transport carrying them would never reach any prison world. Somewhere in the empty space between stars, 5 human soldiers would die quietly, and their bodies would be lost to the void. But the damage was already done. Vexhai's desk was covered, with intelligence reports from across the galaxy. On Theta Prime, a mining colony had stopped shipments to the Council worlds. On Kepler Station, alien overseers had been found dead, with wounds that matched human combat techniques. 3 separate worlds had reported communication blackouts that lasted exactly long enough for encrypted messages to be sent. The human arena broadcasts had not just been entertainment. They had been a recruitment video for rebellion, and the recruits were learning fast. The door chimed and General Corax entered without waiting for permission. The beetle-like alien's mandibles were clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "The Council is demanding answers," Corax said. "How did 5 primitive prisoners manage to create a galactic security crisis?" Vexhai looked up from his reports. They did exactly what they intended to do from the beginning. Which was what? Teach their species how to fight us. Corax's compound eyes focused on the papers scattered across Vexhai's desk. "You have been studying them?" "Yes." Vexhai picked up one of the files. "Do you know what I found? The sole defense was not a desperate last stand. It was a training exercise." He opened the file to a page of tactical analysis. Every human unit that fought in Sol documented their battles. They recorded what weapons worked against our forces, what tactics were effective, what our weaknesses were. Then they transmitted all that information to resistance cells across their planet. That, is standard military intelligence gathering. No, Vexhai shook his head. Standard intelligence is collected for your own forces. The humans were collecting it for anyone who might fight us in the future. They were creating a manual for resisting galactic conquest. Corax clicked his mandibles dismissively. One planet's resistance cannot threaten the entire Council. Vexhai stood and activated his wall display. It showed a map of Council territory with hundreds of red dots marking recent incidents of unrest. "These are not random uprisings," he said. "They are coordinated actions using tactical methods developed by humans. The rebels are studying our arena broadcasts and learning from them. The display zoomed in on specific incidents. Supply convoys, ambushed using techniques Taman had demonstrated against the Beast Warriors. Communication stations attacked with methods Jiwan had used against the Hunters. Medical networks treating rebel casualties with procedures Hana had improvised in the arena. Impossible, Korax whispered. The humans were not prisoners. HFY continued. They were instructors, and we gave them the perfect classroom. He changed the display to show communication intercepts, coded messages spreading across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. Each message contained tactical data, strategic advice, and something even more dangerous, proof that the Galactic Council could be beaten. Every species in our territory saw those humans defeat our best warriors, HFY said quietly. For the first time in centuries, conquered peoples are asking themselves why they submitted so easily. Korax studied the intelligence reports with growing alarm. What do you recommend? HFY was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a decision. That would change his life forever. I recommend, he said slowly, that we stop pretending we are the superior civilization. What? Look at these reports, Korax. Really look at them. HFY pointed to specific incidents. The humans did not beat us with superior technology or numbers. They beat us with something we had forgotten we once possessed. Which is what? The willingness to die for principles instead of living for comfort. Korax's mandibles clicked in confusion. You are talking like one of them. Maybe I am. HFY walked to his window, looking out at the stars. Do you know what I realized while watching those humans fight? We are not an advanced civilization. We are a comfortable one. He turned back to face Korax. When did we last fight for something we believed in? When did we last risk anything for someone weaker than ourselves? When did we last choose the difficult right over the easy wrong? You are having some kind of breakdown, Korax said nervously. No, HFY replied. I am having an awakening. He walked to his desk and activated his personal communication system. Computer, open a priority channel to all Council intelligence. Networks. HFY, what are you doing? Something I should have done weeks ago. The communication system activated with a soft chime. HFY looked directly into the recording device. This is Commander HFY, reporting a critical security breach in the gladiatorial arena program. All arena recordings and intelligence files are being transmitted to galactic networks immediately. Korax lunged for the communication controls, but HFY had locked them with his personal codes. The human prisoners were intelligence operatives, conducting a psychological warfare campaign, he continued. Their mission was successful. All tactical data, weapon specifications, and strategic analyses are now being broadcast to resistance networks across the galaxy. He paused, thinking about Taman's nod of acknowledgement, about Hana's dedication to healing even her enemies, about Kyung's quiet leadership in the face of certain death. Furthermore, he said, I am providing detailed information about Council, military capabilities, patrol schedules, and defensive weaknesses to any species interested in recovering their freedom. You are committing treason, Korax whispered. No, HFY replied. I am remembering what it means to be a soldier instead of an executioner. The transmission continued for 20 minutes. By the time HFY finished, he had uploaded centuries of classified military intelligence to every communication network in Council space. When it was over, he sat back in his chair and felt something he had not experienced in years. Peace. Why? Korax asked, still staring at the communication system in shock. HFY thought about the 5 humans who were probably already dead, floating in the void between stars. They had known they would not survive their mission, but they had completed it anyway. Because, he said finally, they showed me what we used to be. Security forces would arrive within minutes to arrest him. HFY would be executed as a traitor to his own species. But the information he had released would spread faster than the Council could contain it. Across the galaxy, conquered species would learn about supply schedules, defensive positions, and tactical weaknesses. They would discover that their oppressors were not invincible, just organized and ruthless. The rebellion the humans had started in a simple arena would become a galactic war, and somewhere in the void, 5 human soldiers had achieved something no military force in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had won a victory after death. HFY smiled as he heard security forces approaching his quarters. The humans had taught him one final lesson. Sometimes losing everything was the only way to remember what was worth fighting for. The door exploded inward and armored figures poured into the room. As they surrounded him, HFY thought about Taman's final nod, about the quiet dignity of soldiers who chose death over surrender. Commander HFY, the security leader, announced, "You are under arrest for treason against the Galactic Council." "Yes," he replied calmly, "I am." As they led him away, he could see the communication boards lighting up with reports from across Council territory. Supply convoys under attack, communication stations destroyed, military bases reporting coordinated strikes. The human lesson was spreading, and for the first time in his long life, Commander HFY was proud of his choices. 6 months later, historical records would show that the Galactic Rebellion began not with grand battles or political declarations, but with 5 humans in an arena who refused to die quietly. They had been forced to fight for alien entertainment. Instead, they had taught the galaxy how to be free. And Commander HFY, in his final moments before execution, smiled at the knowledge that he had helped them complete their mission. Some regrets, he realized, were worth carrying forever. Others were worth dying to correct.